Today we've got questions on King Henry VI, Danish royalty, and Charles explains what guild socialism is. Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a post-celebrative, Charles Coulombe.
Post-celebrative, not on your tintype, Sonny Jim.
What?
I say, you heard me, not on your tintype, Sonny Jim.
Oh, I don't feel like that's necessarily a bad. Well, I guess so. Okay, so you're gonna argue it's still the Christmas season.
They are going to be watching this on the Feast of the Epiphany.
That's true.
Which is Metz, the end of the 12 days, sort of. I mean, 12th night, tomorrow night, is really sort of the end, but the Epiphany carries over. And then there's the octave of the Epiphany, 8 days. But wait, there's more. Be the first on your block. Be the first on your block to keep celebrating until Candlemas. Partiers are standing by. Eggnog continues to flow. No, Candlemas is the end of the Christmas season, which is February the 2nd. And that's why a lot of people don't take down the last Christmas decorations until Candlemas Eve.
February 2nd, that's Groundhog Day.
Yes, it is Groundhog Day. But it's Groundhog Day because it's a Candlemas, not the other way around. You see, the fathers of the Groundhog Day superstition were, in fact, Catholic. And for them, when the groundhog gets out of its burrow on Candlemas Day, in Europe, it was a marmot. We don't have marmots. So when they came here, they saw the groundhogs, and they said, it's the groundhog. And then Punxsutawney Phil claimed to be the groundhog supreme. But he has a few rivals, You know,
I feel like there's a lot of traditions that overseas are pretty weird, and then we make them good over here. The
Belsnickel?
No, well, actually, what I'm thinking of is Halloween. You were telling me the jack-o'-lantern, they were originally trying to do that on radishes?
Turnips. Well, yeah, but I mean, they didn't have pumpkins. The pumpkin is perfect. I think what's true is that like Krampus is coming over here in a big way.
Yeah.
And, within 4 or 5 years, we're going to send him back weirdified. I mean, not that Krampus hasn't already arrived a bit off the menu himself. But we're going to send him back somehow. He's going to go back trans with a rainbow.
No.
Yes, and if you're bad, Krampus will catch you and change your gender. And then the Europeans will say that we're decadent and disgusting.
That's pretty scary, actually, to be honest. If you're bad, Krampus will change your gender.
Yeah, that's right.
Really? Okay.
If you're a bad boy, you'll wait. Maybe we'd be better as a girl. We'll find out, won't we? So you like it for a year. And if you don't shape up, you'll stick that way. So there, kid. Mommy, can I try to St. Nicholas? I don't think I like this one. I'm sorry, dear. You should have thought of that before you were a bad boy. Oh, Mom. Excuse me, that should be pronounced, oh, Mom.
Okay, so Christmas season goes on.
The Christmas season rolls on and on. Today is the feast of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. And she was, of course, our very first native-born American saint.
Mm-hmm.
Born, I have to point out, in the city of New York. The same city I was born in, although in lower Manhattan. Where I was born was a howling waste at that time. And the Upper East Side, it was, just nothing there. But she was born into a loyalist family and married a loyalist.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her husband was a direct descendant, a great grandson or something, of Mary Seton, who was one of the four ladies in waiting, the four Marys to Mary Queen of Scots, who shared her various unpleasant adventures. And there's a miniature you can see if you go to the shrine at Emmitsburg, Maryland. There's a miniature of Mary Queen of Scots that was passed down in the Seton family from that time to her time. So they were very much aware of this.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Go on.
Be the first on your block. No, it has come to my attention that one of the best articles in Wikipedia, source of all knowledge and truth, is Under Siege. Dun, dun, dun.
What's going on?
Well, it is an article called Traditional Monarchy, which is obviously from the style of writing and the mistakes. It was written chunks, it was obviously different hands, but chunks of it were written probably by a person who wrote in Spanish or Portuguese or Italian as a native tongue. I mean, despite that, it's filled with really good information about traditional monarchy, as traditional Catholic monarchy, as opposed to constitutional, absolute, or feudal. It's a great article, and I don't say that just because I've popped up in it, although I have.
Oh, okay. Well, now we get it. Now we never heard. That's why we never heard of it until now.
This is not special pleading. Well, that's because I wasn't added to it until last. I mean, but no, seriously, they do mention me literally in one sentence as an American who's interested in this stuff. But I mean, it's a really, really good, well done article. And if you go to it, it says, this article is being considered for deletion. Because, there are certain ideas that little white boys shouldn't be allowed to think.
Somebody pocket that. Somebody archive it or save it just in case it goes bye-bye, please.
Just in case the white breads get their way. The little ones.
This has been on my mind lately because Wikipedia has been in the news a little bit. I think they're hurting for funding a little bit. I know Elon's talking about them. Wokepedia, right? I wanted to ask you how you think how easy it is to replace Wikipedia with. I mean, obviously it takes a lot of effort. It's probably highly volunteer dependent.
It is.
I mean, are we really stuck with it forever?
Well, nothing's forever. I mean, I'm so old. I remember when there wasn't a Wikipedia.
Well, not forever, but
look, the problem is Wikipedia is almost the last gasp of something common on the internet.
What?
Everything is specialized. Everything according not simply to subject, but according to taste, according to view. In other words, the vast majority of people would call themselves liberal or conservative or progressive or sane or whatever they might call themselves, tend to gravitate toward a particular set of things on the internet that simply reflect their views.
Right.
What has been constantly eroding has been a really or apparently neutral marketplace of ideas. And Wikipedia, certainly in its beginning, attempted to continue that tradition and still makes a stab at it, kind of like archive.org. Although archive.org, I mean, they have the complete set of Triumph magazine on archive.org, and it's all been wiped out.
What?
Yeah, it's all gone. Okay.
Why?
The thoughts the little white breads shouldn't think. See, little white breads, they should.
But that's not even editorial. That's just simply like putting documents.
Yeah, but they're documents you shouldn't read.
That's way worse than editorializing to me, because that's not even.
Well, yeah, it's 1984.
That's book burning.
It's book burning. It's elimination. It's 1984. It's the Ministry of Truth.
That's crazy.
Well, if you don't like it, you should write to archive.org and ask them why they keep asking you for money. And if they really want some.
That's actually something that we should all do. The one time I did it post-COVID, the business owner went bonkers, absolutely bonkers, and it was actually over something quite trivial. It was over Mother Moo's, our favorite ice cream store. Really cute, really small town, and they're being stupid about masks and other things. And so I didn't want to wear masks anymore, and so I went to a different ice cream shop, and I bought a lot of ice cream, and then I went ahead and I emailed them and I showed them the check that I paid from the other ice cream shop, and the owner went absolutely berserk on me. It was crazy. I loved it, and what's more important, after she went berserk, she's like, "Oh, I'm saving lives with the mask and all this and that," and it was this giant rant. And then next week they didn't require masks.
No.
Literally next week, because it was hurt. I like to think because it was hurting. The do-re mi.
Well, and I think it also there's an old saying in the trade: for every one letter you get, there's 100 people who don't write but feel the same way.
Right.
And this doesn't work so much usually with government, but it can with private things.
Right.
And so it's quite likely. I mean, the lady, apart from putting out a really good product, you can't take that away from her.
Yeah.
Apart from that, she's not stupid. You don't accomplish what she's accomplished by being a moron.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that after she got over her initial fit, she looked and she thought about the dollars and cents, and also about the fact that, all these other businesses had dropped masks and somehow people weren't dying. And she did it. And hats off to her because it showed she was smart.
Yeah.
And again, I can't maximize enough the high quality of her ice cream. It's really, really good. I was tempted to stop by there after breakfast today, but somehow going from breakfast to
the ice cream
to
shop,
Mrs.
to Peacock Donuts,
to Peacock Donuts to here. I mean,
you're gonna have to get a wheelbarrow.
I mean, look, as you all can see, all of my suits are becoming form-fitting again, and in such a form. That would have been too much. Had to butter the doors so I could get in the studio entrance. The resulting pop. Oh, he's here. So anyway, just so you know, there are a lot of culinary choices in this part of the world, and if you eat at every one of them, you'll notice it. I know I have. I mean, anyway. So seriously though, the suppression of Triumph magazine, if you deal with archive.org, you deal with the Wayback Machine, whatever. Write them and ask them and say, do they really not want you to give any money ever again? And ditto with our friends at Wikipedia, Source of All Truth. Why would they want to take down a well-researched article on a series of ideas that I guess, little white breads aren't allowed to think? And I get it, because this kind of thought really and truly is primarily Latin, not exclusively, but it's primarily Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, Central European, greasy people. And I can see why WASP descendants of a, certain caste would be embarrassed by it. It'd be kind of like having, I don't know, garlic-filled canapes.
Yeah.
It would offend your ethnic prejudices. Like the old joke about the Unitarian lady in Boston, when she was asked why she couldn't believe in the divinity of Christ.
I remember this one.
Yeah, she said, I simply cannot believe in a God who would name his only son after my gardener. And I can understand that kind of prejudice informs a great deal of the Wikipedians. And I accept that, being of French-Canadian, New England descent, the son of men who were second and third class citizens in rotting mill towns owned by old Yankees. I understand completely. And I know we should know our place. I get it. But it's still not fair.
There, and it's interesting because you wonder what to do. I've talking to there's sort of a network of Catholic entrepreneurs out there, and a lot of us, a lot of people have a problem with YouTube as well, right? Because of there's certain restrictions, there's certain things you can't say. This channel has experienced a couple strikes
What?
because of their weirdness. But
I've never had that problem.
But what we was attempted was doing an alternative YouTube. There's been multiple attempts actually. It's not just sort of the Catholic world, but they don't pan out. And one of the reasons why I think they unfortunately don't pan out is because see, like there's two sides, right? And they're each what you'd say active minorities.
Yeah.
But in the middle is this giant group of people that just want to put out content.
Yeah.
This is what people ate in the medieval times. History channels. There's all sorts of wonderful documentary channels that are neither here nor there. They're just
good stuff that's there.
Good stuff, and so you miss out on that.
And that's what you don't want to miss out on.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's, as I say, if these sorts of things interest you, right, the party is responsible. I'll just say that while you accept the fact that censorship is important and it's necessary to carefully guide thought, lest people have one. If thought is left to itself, people tend to have them.
Yeah, I guess I agree. Yeah.
And that can be a danger, and I accept that. But I also accept the fact that some thoughts, by their nature, remind one of smelly garlic Latin peoples.
Well,
I get it. I am one.
This reminds me of Charles Coulombe prediction. I remember when we first came out, and you were making all these predictions left and right, and people are hailing you as a prophet over various things.
Criswell's own.
One of the things that I'm going to bring to mind is your prediction that banning these ideas and putting them off limits, that's sort of creating this forbidden fruit. And I think, remembering how you said people are going to delve into these even more than you ever imagined.
Yeah, and honestly, I stand by it. The article in itself, to say nothing of actually somebody going to the trouble of putting all of Triumph magazine online. I mean, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you don't do that unless it's a labor of love. If you look at the article, the Traditionalist Monarchy article, it is so long and so informative. There's so much to it that this is obviously a person or probably persons who are really into it, and probably would not have been so into it if there weren't ideas that are outside the permitted spectrum. I mean, and when I'm saying the permitted spectrum, even fascist ideas, even Nazism, is within the permitted spectrum in comparison. And the fact is that the Nazis and fascists are welcome if only as whipping boys. But these sorts of ideas are dangerous to the regime because there is nothing inherently evil or pernicious about them. That's what's wrong with them. Don't get me wrong. Maybe they're not correct. Maybe they wouldn't work. Maybe they're impractical, although they do have a long record of having worked. But in that sense, they're much more of a threat to the powers that be, these ideas, than those of Hitler or Mussolini or whatever, Stalin, which are, after all, simply variations of the same modern theme.
Well, and this is part of the reason why I wonder how long China can last.
Mm.
Because talk about repression of ideas.
Well, repression of ideas, and also an ever greater distance in economic being between the rural and the city. You know, how sustainable is that? How long that? I don't know. And again, you know, the foolish mind can say, well, that'd be a great thing for, nah, if China collapses in civil war, we'll all feel it, and not in nice ways, because she has her hands on the economic, and you can say, well, at least we'd be able to get all our paper back. Yeah, you forget how much of our trade is with China. How much of our cheap crap do we get from China? We'd have to start making here again. And then you could say, okay, well, that would stimulate American jobs. It doesn't happen overnight. That kind of disruption in the economic flow would take several years to renew. And of course, when it was done, I mean, I'm so old. I remember when we didn't trade with mainland China, and all of our garbagey stuff was either made here or in Japan. It was gradual that all that shifted. To suddenly change it overnight would be
dramatic. Yeah, it would be rough.
It'd be very rough. So, you know, maybe in the end it would be for the best. Oh, that's true for so many things. But anyway, never you mind. Let's get on to the questions.
Well, okay, right. I just keep thinking of the people in the audience who are complaining.
Oh. Lady of Spain, I adore you. Oh, by the way, shout out to all my Quebecois friends who responded to our dialogue last time. You know, I've got to tell you, the comments were very intelligent, and you know, there was an interesting thing. Legault, the Premier of Quebec, who is ironically, and only a French Canadian can insult in this wonderful way. He was said, oh, he's very loyal to his king. Now that, of course, was meant as a complete insult. And beautifully done, by the way. Heads up. But what one has to remember, over and over again, I'll say it, the British monarchy, the Canadian monarchy, is not the enemy of the French Canadians. The enemy of the French Canadians, first and foremost, are the French Canadians. As long as we continue to betray the faith of our fathers, we have nothing to say to anybody about anything. I can say the same about the Irish, incidentally, or the Catholic Dutch. Gosh, a lot of people's come to mind. The Mexicans. Anyway, point is that one has to bear in mind when one looks at the Crown, always the Quebec Act. The conquest was a terrible thing, and I wish it hadn't happened. But it saved us from the Revolution. The French Revolution, I mean. So one has to remember Providence not simply as a town in Rhode Island. That's how we would say that. Providence, which is near Fall Rive, Massachusetts. You know Massachusetts?
No.
It's a state in the United States.
Massachusetts?
No, Massachusetts.
Okay. No, Charles and I really, we read all the comments. So please send in all the comments you have, whether it's good or bad. It helps the algorithm either way. And even if no one happens to respond to it, or if I don't even happen to give it a thumbs up or something like that, we're still reading it. And we still appreciate it regardless. Yeah. So,
I'll just say, to quote Kipling, who, in some ways, I've always said, caught the spirit of the French Canadian better than anybody else in the English speaking world. The four lines he attributes to Quebec and Montreal. Peace is our portion, but a whisper arose, half in hate, half in jest. Half in jest and half in hate. And we, remembering ancient blows and fearing no man, wait.
You know, for some reason, that always reminds me of the We Folk poem.
Well, I suppose
it's people that you don't, very unassuming, waiting to destroy.
We're very nice. No, really, I wouldn't worry too much. I'm sure it'll be all right for now. Really, relax. Everything will be fine. No, I know what you mean, but there's a certain mercuriality to the French Canadians, which is both, I find delightful, but I think a lot of people find very annoying.
Yeah, well, God didn't just come for the righteous, he came for the annoying, too.
Right. Said the Southern Italian, just, the Neapolitan.
All right.
Are there any righteous in Southern Italy?
What did you say?
Are there any righteous in Southern Italy? That's all. Home of the mafia. The Camorra. I mean, not that you would know anything about the mafia or Camorra. I mean, you know what? Let's just move along.
I don't see what your problem is with community activism, Charles.
I stand corrected.
I mean, you just call names. I don't get it. Yeah, name calling is the hallmark of the modern mind. For something they don't understand. That's a quote from you.
I hoist by my own petard. Oh, my own words used against me. Is there justice in this world? Is there balm in Gilead? All right, fine. Give me some questions.
All right. Isaac says, I recently learned that King Henry VI had a well-developed cult with hundreds of well-attested miracles by the time of the English Reformation. But the canonization process ultimately failed due to Henry VIII. Are there Anglo-Catholics or ordinary Catholics who venerate him? Is this allowed? I cannot determine if he is even officially a blessed, though one biographer in 1920s expressed hopes his cause could be taken up with the Pope.
Well, let's answer that in reverse order. Yeah, the answer is he's a servant of God. His cause has never been closed, although it was officially opened. So he's a servant of God, like Mary Queen of Scots, like James II. Can you venerate him as a servant of God? Yes, you sure can. In the 1960s, there was a Henry VI Society dedicated, Catholics dedicated to just that thing. They put out a very nice prayer book, a copy of which I have, actually. And if you go on to the internet and you put in Henry VI Society, there's a gentleman in Vienna, an Australian man named Tattersall, who is trying to continue the work of the Henry VI Society. So you could look that up online. He's venerated as the founder by both Eton College and King's College, Cambridge. They have the lessons and carols. And every year on his death, there's a ceremony where his devotees leave golden roses on his tomb. Not golden roses, yellow roses, in token of the golden rose that was sent him by the Pope. So the answer is, yes, his cultus is still alive. Yes, you can venerate him. If you can get a hold of a copy of that prayer book, you can see them online. That's where I got mine. Feel free to nab it and use it.
Okay. Quinn says, Charles, great to speak to you again. You led my tour of Vienna this past January with Franciscan University, which I'm still extremely grateful for and continue to reflect on. I'm graduating in the spring from my home university. I was a transfer student with Franciscan for the semester. And he has degrees in economics and history, and was wondering what books you would recommend on economic theory for an intuitive Catholic and or monarchist approach to economics. Thanks again. You will be in his prayers.
Well, I can recommend Hilary Belloc, The Servile State and Economics for Helen, Chesterton's What's Right with the World, I think. And I forget the name of the author, but there's a book with the title Monarchy and Money Power. Oh, and also Belloc's The House of Commons and Monarchy. I'd recommend those very highly. I remember you, Quinn, so, glad to see I'm not forgotten. At least, not yet. The time will come, when I'm but a memory with Vienna, with Steubenville, with Calming, with Nineveh and Tyre.
Nineveh and Tyre, this is like St. Paul or something then?
Yeah, Nineveh is the ruins, Tyre.
Oh. Okay.
For cold our navies melt away, into dune and headland sink the fire. Lo, all our pomp of yesterday is one with Nineveh and Tyre. Judge of the nations, spare us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. You know where that's from?
That's Kipling.
It is Kipling.
Yeah. Recessional?
That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ray Bradbury would be proud.
Awesome. Random question, since we're asking about authors. Have you? I'm on my to read list. I have a lot of Thomas Stork books. Have you read him at all?
I have. He's very good writer.
Yeah.
I'd recommend him. Yeah.
What do you think about him? Any in terms of what he puts out? Like.
Well, I mean, he's working with the whole field of distributism, integralism. All the stuff that's causing all of the talk and confusion right now. He's a very good writer and a very good guide to this stuff. Yeah,
I think the book on my list that I really want to read is Foundations of the Catholic Political Order. I think
it's a good book. I recommend it very highly.
Awesome. All right, Josh says, "Hey Charles, so recently the youngest daughter of the Danish king and the third in line for the throne of Denmark, Princess Josephine of Denmark, appeared in a miniseries for a couple of episodes. The princess has been appearing at school plays in the past and seems to be interested in pursuing a career in the field. How do you two both feel about it? Does it cheapen the monarchy, or should she be able to do what she wants, since she is not expected to become queen unless something very bad happens to her older brother and sister? As a side note, she was credited as HRH, Princess Josephine, in the credits."
Well, I think on the one hand, probably if she wanted, given that she's not directly in line for the throne, she ought to be able to do what she likes, I suppose, but not as HRH Princess Josephine, just as Josephine Glücksborg or something.
Oh.
I mean, if she's going to start doing that, when you start trading on it, it becomes problematic. So she should just go out as Josephine Glücksborg, and then and save the HRHs if she decides to do royal stuff.
Okay, I'm a little surprised, but so how about the question? Okay, let's say she drops the HRH. Then it doesn't cheapen it in any way, even though she is a princess.
No, because I mean, you had Habsburgs in the same boat. You had the Princess of Denmark. I mean, here in Arcadia. Speaking of Denmark, here in Arcadia, the Congo Church.
Right. Yes.
The Prince. What is it? Prince something Hall. That Prince of Denmark married morganatic. He moved here to Arcadia in the 20s and had a chicken ranch. That was his house.
Wow.
And then, he moved back to Denmark afterwards. But it's funny. There are two different royal connections in this town. That's the Danish prince's house, now the Congo Church's auditorium.
Yeah.
And the Serbian Orthodox Church over on Baldwin, that had the only state funeral of a once reigning king in the continental United States.
Wow.
And that was for King Peter II of Yugoslavia in 1971.
Wow.
Arcadia, refuge of royals.
You know what came to mind as a funny thing just popped in there is Grace Kelly.
She did not live here.
No, but wasn't she a princess?
Well, yeah, she married Prince Rainier and Monaco.
So that's an example of. I don't know if she
It
was
goes the
acting
other way.
while she was a princess.
No. She gave it all up.
Oh, okay.
She was an extremely popular and great actress. She marries Prince Rainier, gave all that up.
Yeah.
And, she played the role of HRA or HSH, Her Serene Highness. That's what a sovereign prince or princess is called, Serene Highness. Her Serene Highness, Princess Grace, that was the role she played for the rest of her life and played it to a T.
Wow.
She was very, very good at it.
All right. Abe has a bunch of questions. He says, "Hello, Charles and Vincent. I am an avid listener from L'Etoile du Nord, and this show has turned me from a social democrat to a Christian Democrat. And finally, monarcho-guild distributist.
Ooh.
Anyway, I just have a couple questions for Charles. First, what is guild socialism? And what is its relation to distributism and corporatism?"
Well, these three are actually not dissimilar. It's just they're starting with very much the same first principles, but looking at different aspects of the social and political order. I'll explain what I mean by that. They all start out with the Catholic notion of man. The economy is made for man, not man for the economy. The interest of the state is the common good. Now, there are non-Catholic guild socialists, non-Catholic distributists, non-Catholic corporatists, but they don't really matter for our exercise.
Okay.
Because these three things are all, in a sense, well, on the one hand, they're confessionally neutral. Unlike capitalism or communism, which are self-justifying in purely economic terms, these three things cannot justify themselves solely in economic terms, because they go back to the worth of the human being. Which means, to put this another way, none of these three systems, and again, you might even call it systemettes or one interconnecting system, for reasons I'll explain momentarily, they require a non-economic justification, having to deal with a certain vision of man and society and the state. If it's not going to be Catholicism, it'll have to be something else. That's why you could have fascist corporatism. It's why you could have Protestant corporatism in Latvia. But so what I'm saying is, or the Germans, they had this racial thing under the Nazis, but none of those are strictly economic. All of them look to basically see the economy and economics as a means to an end, not an end in themselves. But I'm going to deal with the Catholic side of distributism, corporatism, and guild socialism simply because A, they're the only ones I'm interested in, so that makes it easy. And B, they're also, in my humble opinion, the ones like this to work on the long run. So, what are they? Well, corporatism we'll start with. Corporatism is the idea that, well, firstly, all three are answers to Marxism.
Hmm.
Okay, now, what is Marxism? Well, Marxism takes the Industrial Revolution and the growth of an industrial proletariat treated like garbage and a wealthy bourgeoisie that owned everything as constant enemies. And for the Marxists, and this was simply seen as the reality.
Yeah.
For the Marxists, the answer is to destroy the bourgeoisie, elevate the proletariat with a set of revolutionaries who would basically guide them. There'd be a period of tutelage in which they'd be trained to be free people, and then the state would wither away and everybody would be happy. That was the idea. Now, of course, that was never going to happen. Instead, you would get to the tutelage period, and that would never end. So, in response to that, all three of these sorts of thinkers said, well, no, the labor and capital, and for that matter, the consuming public, should be friends and allies. Again, the whole thing is the common good, you see.
Yeah.
So instead of class conflict, class enemies, we need class cooperation. You see?
Yeah.
All right, well, how do you bring that about? Well, for the corporatists, the idea was to organize the differing economic factors in society as corporations. So in other words, we had, we'll take shoes, okay?
Yeah.
Well, you've got, in the normal run of things as they're developed, you've got the shoemakers union. You've got the shoe sellers association. You've got independent cobblers and all that, some of whom were just repairmen, and others of whom actually are the fashion designers of the shoe world.
Hmm.
You know, bespoke cobblers. And from them, the ideas go to the shoe retailers, you know, who try to cash in. And they, in turn, in their factories, have the shoes made, depending upon, you know, what they think is going to sell. And then the factory workers in the shoe factories are the workers. So for the corporatist, and actually for the guild socialist, the two are quite similar in this respect. What you would do is you would organize a corporation or a guild that all these elements were part of. In other words, the workers, the capital, their managers, the salespeople, the independent cobblers, etc. And together, they would determine things like the quality of the shoes, what, you know, that kind of stuff. So that rather than fighting each other over costs, they would set just wages, just expenses, and so on and so forth. And the beneficiary would be the public, of whom, of course, they themselves were also members when it came to the other corporations. You know, you may be a member of the shoe corporation, but as a member of the shoe corporation, you're part of the public when it comes to the iron corporation.
Yeah.
But more than that, so far the guild socialists and the corporatists they would say basically the same thing. Where it would get interesting, though, is that for the corporatists in particular, it was the idea that your representation in a sort of parliament should be on the basis of your corporation.
Hmm.
So, in other words, you might have a couple of houses of parliament, but one of them would be based not on geography, but on corporation.
Hmm. So
there'd be one house dedicated to the different economic interests of the state.
Hmm.
And they would be represented there that way. And these would be the building blocks of the state, basically. Now, distributism is, functionally speaking, actually somewhat connected with the other two. Its emphasis is different, though. When they looked at the structures, distributists simply saw the fact that property is best when it's widely distributed. In other words, a situation it's better when there are a lot of small landowners than a lot of big estates. A lot of small businesses rather than huge conglomerates. And so they looked for the widest possible distribution of property. You can see how that could fit in with the other two. So that I had spoken of the, for the corporatist, you'd have the big shoe companies, and the little cobblers. Well, if there was a distributist element to it, there wouldn't be any big shoe companies. It'd just be small shoe companies, and then independent people. So that's roughly the connection between them. And all three, of course, saw the common good of the citizen as being the primary interest of the state, rather than simply profit. So does that, and actually, you can put, when you think of these three as connected, as attempts at class cooperation, another word you can use for it is the modern Catholic social theory word solidarity. And another term that's been used to describe these sorts of things is solidarism. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I wish our society, I feel like it's within grasp and that we have the mechanisms and tools to be slightly more distributist in practice, just simply in terms of regulating mergers and acquisitions. Well, when you've got like one $40 billion company merging with another $40 billion company.
Well, see, the problem you get into, though, is who's going to be in charge. Who's going to make the decisions? In other words, as things stand, remember the state is never neutral. You cannot have a neutral state. The state is always in the hands of someone, and it always has an animating philosophy, a state church, if you like. It always has a ruling class. I don't care what the state calls itself. I don't care what it's got that. So you say, well, it feels like it's within our grasp. Well, it would be, except that the people who dominate in our setup are the people who would profit from such a merger.
I see.
Now, and also their vision is very tunnel oriented. The idea of the common good is completely alien, partly alien as a whole to our political tradition. Certainly alien to these guys. I mean, there is no individual in the United States of America who looks at the United States of America as my country, and as Americans, and to Americans as my people, because we're all equal. And the problem with that kind of equality, is that no one has responsibility. No one, I mean, you can have a president like Reagan or a president like Obama, but either way, they'll be out in 4 to 8 years. And it's not as though they feel that God gave them responsibility for life to try to help his people work themselves out. We don't have a figure like that. We can't.
That's so interesting. So it seems, so just revisiting some of the things you said, so you're talking about Marxism, and one of the things you're talking about the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, and you were saying that they, basically they should be at war with each other, or you weren't saying that, but Marx was saying that.
Yeah, well, they said they had to be, because their interests are inevitably separate. The proletariat, the bourgeoisie want to squeeze as much money as they can out of the proles, and the proles obviously want as much money as they can out of the bourgeoisie.
So is that fair to say that that's the basic error of Marxism, is basically there is no common good?
Yeah, and that there is no God, but from that comes no common good.
Right, no God, and therefore no common good.
You see, if there is no God, then human beings are nothing but a bunch of competing animals. And see, another less elevated error in Marx's thinking. He takes away God, he takes away the common good, Well, then, if that's the case, why is the good of the proletariat more important than the good of the bourgeoisie? Why shouldn't the bourgeoisie be able to squeeze every drop out of the proles?
Does he answer that question?
No. I don't think he had one. I don't think there is one. I did know a person, a very wealthy individual, not a Catholic, who said, "Oh, I accept Marxist theory completely."
Okay.
Then you can guess what the rest of it was.
Yeah.
He squeezed every drop he could out of the working class.
See. Other thing that's just fascinating, the whole your term was a little bit funny. The tutelage period.
Yeah.
The tutelage period. It brought this really sort of morbid imagery in my mind, where perhaps these innocent peasants are sending letters to Lenin or Stalin. It's like, do you know when the tutelage period is over?
Yeah, well, no, but I can tell you when your lifespan is over. That would be the response. So you didn't ask that question. The state would naturally wither away.
Yeah.
Once the proletariat was sufficiently mature, the state would wither away.
Yeah.
Organically, naturally, without any issues. You know, that period of tutelage, it always made me think of the motto of the Soviet Psychiatric Service. They used to say, punishment has to end at some point, but treatment can be forever. Well, you're not quite ready for freedom yet. It's been 700 years. Yes, we know. We'll let you know. Because the state will naturally wither away. See, part of that, too, was the idea that man can become virtuous under his own guidance, and that if you give him the right surroundings, he will inevitably become so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, another great error of Marx's thing was to think that what makes men bad and sinful is the structures under which they live.
Mm.
But it's not what makes men sinful. What makes men sinful is his fallen nature. And that being the case, the state, once established, will never wither away. And the more, and this is again kind of a lesson from history, but a fact of human psychology as well, the more you push the lie, the more the truth will assert itself. The more you claim everybody's wonderful, the more the reality will make itself known. So, anyway.
All right. What does Charles think of Georgism and the land value tax, and would it work within an American Catholic monarchy?
I don't know. I mean, see, Georgism, like the three we've looked at, like social credit, was sort of a whole family of ideas. Henry George in his single tax was very, very specific. I don't know how it would work in real life.
Finally, could you talk about the history of Minnesota, specifically its Catholic history?
Well, sure. Minnesota was, of course, originally settled. Its first European settlements were French, specifically near St. Anthony, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities. There was a little settlement called St. Anthony, St. Antoine, and the French settled Minnesota very, very lightly. There's up in northwestern Minnesota, this is a town, I want to say Gilvard, but that may not be the name. Something like that. It begins with a G anyway, I think. I could be wrong. There's still little French Canadian towns scattered around Minnesota, and that was the first Catholic settlement under the old French regime. The area was nominally Spanish until it was bought by the United States in 1803. That is, the area west of the Mississippi, Minnesota east of the Mississippi, was part of the United States from 1783.
Okay.
It was, great agricultural country. It was opened up for settlement beginning after the Black Hawk War in the 1830s, and Germans and Scandinavians and Irish and people like that came in.
When you say open up for settlement, what does that mean?
Well, it means that it was a wholly Indian country before, except for the little French settlements. And then when the Indians were defeated and moved off, now the land could be settled.
I see what you're saying.
Because the Indians, you got to bear in mind, they didn't go in for farming in quite the same way that we did.
Right. They weren't used to that.
No, and it's not the way they lived. The Plains Indians, and most of Minnesota were plains, they lived off buffalo. And before the horse came, they would have to live along in mud lodges along the rivers. And when they would go hunting buffalo, they'd chase them off cliffs. That was the only way they could catch them. And, of course, it was a lot of wastage, as you can guess.
Dances with Wolves had a totally different take.
Okay. Anyway, it also had, what's his name?
Kevin Costner.
That's the one. Anyway, whose best role that I ever saw him in was being rejected for being badly dressed at the bar of the Huntington Hotel in Pasadena. That was a very happy moment in my life.
Top 5 most hated of Charles's actors, I'm pretty sure.
That was just so you know, ladies and gentlemen. I was sitting in the bar of the Ritz-Carlton Huntington, which in those days had a dress code. And Kevin Costner comes there in jeans and a T-shirt. And the maitre d' comes running up, and he says, "I'm very sorry, sir, I can't seat you." And he fell back on the time-consecrated idiot's comment, which was, "Do you know who I am?" And he said, "Yes, Mr. Costner, I do, but we made no provision for denim." So Costner left. He turns around, and the whole bar, and he made a very stiff bow to all and sundry and went on his way. So that was a very special moment for me, as a resident of the Southland, as a person living on the fringes of the industry, as a man who will never do lunch in this town again, having told that story. As someone whose career is now shredded.
Okay, so we went from a history of Minnesota to the Indians to Kevin Costner.
Hey, you brought up Dances with Wolves, all right?
I just love it. I just love it.
I stand absolved.
I'm not complaining.
Anyway, but no. So they had some the Lakota Dakota Sioux had a huge counterattack during the Civil War against the settlers, called the Black Hawk, not the Black Hawk War. Gosh, you know what? I can't remember it. I can't remember the name. But it was a very, very bloody affair, and then they were defeated, and the settlement of Minnesota went on after the Civil War. The most notable Catholic in the history of Minnesota was the infamous Archbishop Ireland, who was the Bishop of St. Paul. In some ways, he did a lot of good. He built there are 2 French-Canadian parishes in downtown in Minneapolis, downtown St. Paul. One of them is St. Louis of France, and the other, St. Louis de France, the other is the Immaculate Conception, and it was, I believe, it was named in 1854 or 5. It claims to be the first church in the world named after the Immaculate Conception, after the definition. In other words, churches named after it before, but it claims it was the first after the definition.
Interesting.
And one of them, I don't remember which, still sells tourtière, which is our delicious meat pie.
Ooh.
I don't want to give the impression, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm entirely French-Canadian centric, or getting more so in my old age. But tourtière is really wonderful, especially at Christmas time. It's a meat pie, and it's just great. Croutons spread on. Anyway, never mind. Let's move along.
Move along.
So, nothing to see here, folks. So, you had the great cathedral in St. Paul and the Basilica of St. Mary in Minneapolis, which he built. He brought a lot of Catholic ethnic groups out to Minnesota.
Mm.
He founded the Catholic Colonization Association. So all that was great. But unfortunately, he was also one of the leaders of the Americanist Party in the Catholic Church. And he was responsible for not one but two schisms: the Polish National Catholic Church and the American Carpatho-Russian Orthodox Catholic Church, Greek Orthodox Catholic Church. So, most people are able to just cut it with one schism, but to be responsible for two is...
Yeah.
That having been said, however, many, many years later, in the dark days of the late 20th century, the cities had and have in St. Paul a church called St. Agnes, which is the Austrian National Church, owned by the Austrian National Committee.
Mm.
And they had a pastor named Monsignor Richard Schuller, whom I had the great honor of knowing. And Monsignor Schuller was the president of the North American Church Music Association. To this day, as a result of what he established there, they have choral masses at St. Agnes, full orchestral things, Haydn, Mozart, etc., etc. Really amazing, and of course done as part of a mass, not as entertainment, not as a concert.
Yeah.
And I do believe that hearing sacred music of that sort in the context in which it was intended for is an amazing experience, and not one to be missed.
Hmm. Okay, anything else about Minnesota?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite places, and I do enjoy going there.
Hmm.
I love Minnesota.
What's your favorite town?
St. Paul.
Hmm. Any notable parishes?
Well, St. Agnes, St. Boniface downtown, I mentioned St. Denis, St. Louis of France, Immaculate Conception. There was, sadly no longer, but there was a very fine ordinariate community there, which I was very fond of, and is now one with the ages, sadly. And that, it's also where the Wanderer and the Remnant are headquartered.
That's right.
And that's because the Matt family, who made both of these fine publications, were headquartered there. And of course, it's ironic that the Wanderer, which is the older of the two, the first one that they founded, fought the good fight against Archbishop Ireland and the Americanist movement.
It's that old?
Yeah, well, it goes back to 1876.
Wow.
It was originally Devanderer or something. It was German language when it started.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
That's my story. It's sad but true about a world that I once knew. Oh, never mind.
All right. That's going to be it for this episode.
Well, not entirely. Not entirely. I have a question for him.
What?
What is it if it's off the menu?
It's Monday. Wait. Can you flip that around?
Okay. If you save a soul, whose is it likely to be?
It's likely to be mine.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we can't mix it up a little bit, what good is mom and apple pie? Now, I ask you, continued Merry Christmas, Happy Epiphany, which is when you're going to be seeing this. What is it if it's off the Monday? Stop that. What is it if it's Monday?
Off the menu.
What about the soul you save?
Your own.
God bless you. We'll see you next week.